The call came while they were cutting the cake. Laughter filled the room. Music played too loud. Bright decorations covered every wall like nothing bad could ever exist in that space. My nephew stood at the center, smiling, surrounded by everyone who mattered. Everyone except me. Except my child. My phone vibrated in my hand, over and over, the same number flashing again and again. The hospital. I already knew something was wrong. You do not get calls like that unless something has gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. I stepped away from the noise, moving into the hallway where the sound dulled just enough for me to hear. My heart was already racing before I even answered. The voice on the other end was calm. Too calm. That kind of calm only comes when the situation is out of control. They told me my 12-year-old was in the ICU. Critical condition. Words followed, but they blurred together, lost somewhere between disbelief and rising panic. My grip tightened on the phone as the world around me started to shift, the walls feeling closer, heavier. I asked how. No clear answer. Just urgency. Just instructions to come immediately. I hung up without saying goodbye. For a second, I stood there, frozen, trying to process what I had just heard. My child. In the ICU. Fighting for something I could not even see yet. And, just a few feet away, they were celebrating. I turned back toward the living room. Nothing had changed. Laughter still echoed. The cake had been cut. Plates were being passed around. Cameras flashed, capturing moments they would remember as perfect. Perfect. The word made something inside me tighten. Because at that exact moment, my child was alone in a hospital bed. And no one here even knew. Or maybe, they did not care. I stepped into the room again, my eyes scanning every face, searching for something. Concern. Awareness. Anything that matched the reality I had just stepped into. But all I saw were smiles. Carefree. Unbothered. My sister caught my eye from across the room, gesturing for me to come closer, to join the picture, to be part of the moment. Her expression carried expectation, like nothing outside this house could possibly be more important than what was happening right here. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I walked toward her slowly, every step heavier than the last, the noise around me fading into something distant and unreal. She asked where I had been. I looked at her. Really looked this time. And then I told her. My child was in the ICU. The smile on her face did not disappear immediately. It faded slowly. Too slowly. And what came next was not the reaction I expected. Not even close. Because instead of panic, instead of concern, she said something that would stay with me for an entire year. And change everything that came after. She did not rush toward me. She did not ask details. She did not even lower her voice. She just looked at me, her expression shifting from confusion to something else, something colder, something measured. The noise of the party continued behind her, completely untouched by what I had just said. Then she spoke. She said I should not ruin the evening. For a second, I thought I misheard. But her face did not change. She repeated it, softer this time, as if explaining something obvious to a child. Tonight was important. Guests were here. Her son's birthday only came once a year. Whatever was happening could wait a little. Could wait. The words hit harder than the call. My chest tightened as I stared at her, trying to understand how those words could exist in the same moment as what I had just heard. My child was fighting for their life, and she was worried about the mood of a party. Behind her, someone started clapping, calling everyone closer for pictures. Laughter rose again, louder this time, as if the moment demanded it. No one noticed what was happening between us. Or maybe they chose not to. I felt eyes on us now, subtle but present. A few relatives glanced over, sensing tension but not understanding it. My sister noticed too. She stepped closer, her tone dropping just enough to keep the conversation contained. She told me to calm down. Said I always made things dramatic. That line felt familiar. Too familiar. It echoed past arguments, past moments where my concerns were dismissed, where I was made to feel like I was the problem. But this was different. This was not a misunderstanding. This was real. I told her I was leaving. Simple. Direct. But she reached for my arm, her grip firm, stopping me mid-step. The smile returned to her face, not for me, but for the people watching. She leaned in slightly, her voice slow again, controlled. She said I could go after the cake cutting. Just 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I pulled my arm back slowly, the contact sending a sharp wave of anger through me. My mind raced, calculating distance, time, everything that stood between me and the hospital. Every second mattered. And she was asking me to stay. That was when I noticed something else. My husband. Standing near the edge of the room. Watching. Not moving. Not interrupting. Just observing, like he was waiting to see how this would unfold before deciding where he stood. That hesitation felt like a second betrayal layered on top of the first. I looked at him, searching for urgency, for alignment, for anything that matched the gravity of the situation. There was none. Just uncertainty. And that was enough. I turned back toward the door. This time, I did not stop. But as I reached it, something behind me shifted. The music cut for a second. Voices lowered. And then someone said something that made my steps slow down without my permission. They asked what had happened. And my sister answered. Not with the truth, but with something else entirely. Something that would follow me long after I left that house. I stopped with my hand on the door. Not fully turning back. Not fully leaving. Just enough to hear. My sister's voice carried across the room, smooth and controlled. The same tone she used whenever she needed to manage a situation. She told them it was nothing serious. Said I was overreacting again. Mentioned stress, emotions, the usual things people say when they want to shrink something real into something small. The room responded exactly how she expected. Soft laughs. Nods. A few sympathetic looks in my direction, but not the kind that understood. The kind that dismissed. That was the moment everything shifted inside me. Because now it was not just neglect. It was distortion. She was rewriting the truth before I could even speak it. I turned slowly, my eyes moving across the room. Faces I had known for years now looked at me differently. Not with concern. With assumption. Like they had already decided what this situation was. And I had not even said a word to them. My husband stepped forward then, finally moving, but not toward me. Toward her. That movement hit harder than anything else. He leaned in slightly, listening as she repeated the same version to him, softer, more convincing. I watched his expression change as he processed her words. The urgency I needed from him never appeared. Instead, he nodded. That small gesture closed something inside me. Because it meant he chose a version of events that required less action. Less responsibility. I pushed the door open and stepped outside. The noise behind me faded instantly, replaced by cold air and a silence that felt almost unreal after everything I had just left behind. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone again, checking for updates, for missed calls, for anything that could tell me more. There were several. Voicemails. Urgent. I called back immediately, my heart pounding louder with every ring. This time, the voice on the other end was different. Less calm. More direct. They said my child had been brought in unconscious. Possible internal injury. They asked how long it had been since the incident. Incident. The words stopped me. I asked what they meant. There was a pause. Then they said something that made everything tilt. They said there were signs it was not an accident. Not an accident. My grip tightened on the phone as my mind raced, trying to connect something, anything, to what they were telling me. My child had been fine earlier. There had been no warning, no call, nothing that suggested danger. So how did this happen? And why did it sound like someone already knew more than I did? I looked back at the house. Through the window, I could still see them. The lights. The movement. The celebration continuing like nothing outside of it mattered. But now, it felt different. Because suddenly, a thought took hold. Cold. Sharp. Unavoidable. What if this did not start at the hospital? What if it started here? And what if someone inside that house already knew it? The drive to the hospital felt endless. Every red light stretched longer than it should. Every second dragged against the urgency building inside me. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter with each mile, my mind replaying the last few hours, searching for anything I might have missed. Something was wrong. Not just with my child's condition. With everything. The word incident would not leave my head. Not an accident. That meant intent. That meant someone knew more than they were saying. And the only place my child had been before this was that house. I pulled into the hospital parking lot faster than I should have, barely noticing anything around me as I rushed inside. The bright lights, the sterile air, the distant sounds of machines and footsteps all blurred together as I reached the front desk. My voice came out sharper than I expected as I gave my child's name. The nurse's expression changed immediately. Not surprised. Prepared. She told me to follow her. That was not normal. We moved quickly down the hallway, past rooms, past people, past everything that did not matter. My heart pounded harder with every step until we reached a set of doors that felt heavier than anything I had ever faced. ICU. She stopped and looked at me briefly, like she was measuring whether I was ready for what was behind those doors. I was not. But I nodded anyway. Inside, everything felt colder. Machines beeped in steady rhythms. Monitors flashed numbers I could not fully process. And in the middle of it, my child. Still. Too still. The sight hit me all at once, stealing the air from my lungs. Tubes. Wires. A reality I had not prepared for and could never accept. I moved closer slowly, my hand shaking as I reached out, needing to feel something real. Anything. A doctor approached, his expression serious but controlled. He began explaining the condition, the injuries, the risks. Words like trauma, impact, force. None of it matched the image I had in my head, because my child had not been in any accident. I knew that. And then he said something that changed everything. He mentioned a witness. Said someone had brought my child in. Not an ambulance. A person. My mind snapped to attention instantly. I asked who. The doctor hesitated for a second, then answered. A family member. The room seemed to close in around me. Family. The word echoed louder than anything else. Because that meant someone from that house had been there. Had seen what happened. Had known the truth. And still, no one said anything. No one called me. No one stopped that celebration. A cold realization settled in, heavier than anything I had felt so far. This was not just neglect. This was silence. Intentional silence. I looked down at my child again, the machines continuing their steady rhythm, holding onto something fragile, something that should have never been threatened in the first place. Then I looked up at the doctor and asked the only question that mattered now. Who brought my child here? Because whoever it was had the answers everyone else was hiding. And I was about to find out why. The doctor did not answer right away. He glanced toward the nurse, then back at me, like he was deciding how much to say. That hesitation tightened something in my chest. Every second without an answer felt like something else being hidden. I repeated the question. This time, my voice did not shake. He finally spoke. Said the person did not stay long. Dropped my child off, gave minimal information, then left before staff could ask more questions. No name confirmed. No details offered beyond a vague connection. But there was one thing. The nurse stepped forward and added it quietly. They recognized the car. A familiar one. Dark SUV. Local plates. The kind that did not stand out, unless you knew it. My mind moved instantly. Because I did. I had seen that car earlier. Parked right outside my sister's house. Belonging to someone inside. My pulse quickened as pieces began to connect, not perfectly, but enough to form a direction. Someone had been there when it happened. Someone had chosen to bring my child here instead of calling me. And then left. Just left. I looked back at my child, the steady beeping of the machines grounding me in a reality that felt unreal. Whoever had done this, whoever had stayed silent, had made a decision in that moment. A decision to keep me out of it. Why? That question pressed harder than anything else. The doctor continued explaining the condition, the next steps, what they needed to monitor. But I was only half listening now. My focus had shifted. From fear to understanding. This was not random. This was not confusion. This was something that had been handled. Controlled. I stepped out of the ICU room slowly, my mind already moving ahead. The hallway felt quieter now, every sound sharper, more focused. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through recent calls, messages, anything that could point me in the right direction. Then I saw it. A missed call. From earlier. Not the hospital. A family member. One I had not noticed before. The timing matched too closely to ignore. Right before the hospital called. My grip tightened as I stared at the screen. They had tried to reach me, but not enough to explain. Not enough to stop anything. Just enough to say they had done something. That was not an accident. That was intention. I dialed the number immediately, my heart steady now in a way that surprised me. Not calm. Not fear. Something else. Focus. The line rang. Once. Twice. Then connected. A voice answered. Hesitant. Guarded. I did not waste time. I asked them directly if they had been at the house when my child got hurt. There was a pause. Too long. Then came the answer. Yes. My chest tightened, but I stayed steady. I asked what happened. Another pause. Longer this time. And then, they said something that made everything shift again. They said it was not supposed to go that far. Not supposed to go that far. Those words echoed louder than anything else. Because they confirmed what I already feared. This was not just an incident. This was something that started small and turned into something no one could take back. I did not speak right away. I let those words sit between us, heavy and undeniable. Not supposed to go that far. That was not confusion. That was admission. My grip on the phone tightened as I stepped further down the hallway, away from the ICU doors, away from anything that could distract me. I asked them to explain. Simple. Direct. This time, their voice dropped lower, almost like they were afraid someone else might hear. They said it started as a disagreement. Nothing serious at first. Just tension, raised voices, the kind of thing that usually fades. But it did not fade. It escalated. I felt my heartbeat slow, not from calm, but from focus. Every word mattered now. They said my child had been in the backyard. Close enough to hear everything. Close enough to get involved. That detail hit hard. Because I knew my child. They would not stay quiet if something felt wrong. I asked who else was there. Another pause. Then a list of names. All familiar. All inside that house. The same people who had been laughing minutes after I got that call. My chest tightened again, but I forced myself to stay steady. Emotion would come later. Right now, I needed clarity. I asked what caused the injury. This time, the hesitation was longer. Heavier. Then the answer came. A push. The word landed sharply. Not an accident. Not a fall. A push. My mind went blank for a second, then filled with images I did not want but could not stop. My child, small compared to the adults around them, stepping in, trying to say something, trying to stop something. And someone reacting. Too fast. Too hard. I asked who did it. Silence. The kind that tells you the answer before it is spoken. I repeated the question. More firmly. They finally said a name. And everything inside me shifted. Because it was not a stranger. Not someone distant. It was someone who had just been inside that house. Celebrating. Smiling. Acting like nothing had happened. I closed my eyes for a second, letting that reality settle in. Not to accept it, but to understand it fully. This was not just a moment that went wrong. This was something they chose to hide. Together. I asked why no one called me immediately. The answer came quickly this time, almost rushed. They said they panicked. Said they did not want to ruin the party. Said they thought it would be handled quietly. Handled. That word felt colder than anything else. Because it meant they made a decision. A conscious one. To keep me out. To protect themselves first. I opened my eyes again, staring down the empty hallway, the quiet now louder than before. Then I asked the final question. Who brought my child to the hospital? Another pause. Shorter this time. Because now there was no point in hiding. They gave me the name. And the moment I heard it, everything connected. Because it was the last person I expected. And the one person who had stayed silent the entire night. The name did not echo. It settled. Heavy. Final. Unavoidable. My husband. For a moment, everything around me went completely still. The hallway, the distant sounds, Even the steady rhythm of the machines behind the ICU doors felt muted, like my mind had shut everything down to process one single truth. He had been there. He had seen what happened. He had brought our child to the hospital. And then he went back. Back to the party. Back to the laughter. Back to pretending nothing had happened. My grip on the phone loosened slightly, not from weakness, but from the shift happening inside me. This was no longer confusion. No longer fear of the unknown. This was clarity. Cold and precise. I ended the call without another word. There was nothing left to ask. Because now I knew exactly where the silence had started. And who had chosen it. I stood there for a few seconds, letting everything settle into place. Every hesitation from earlier. Every look. Every delay. Every moment where something felt off but I could not explain it. Now it all made sense. He had not been uncertain. He had been hiding. I turned back toward the ICU room, stepping inside again, my focus sharper than before. My child lay there, still fighting, still holding on despite everything that had happened around them. And suddenly, the fear I felt earlier changed. It did not disappear. It transformed into something stronger. Because now this was not just about waiting. This was about accountability. I reached for my child's hand carefully, feeling the warmth, the life still there, still present, still worth everything. I leaned closer, my voice low, steady, carrying a promise I had not fully formed until now. This would not be buried. Not by silence. Not by family. Not by anyone. I stepped back, pulling out my phone again, my movements controlled, deliberate. There were people I needed to contact. Not for comfort. For action. But before I could dial, something at the doorway caught my attention. Movement. I turned slowly. And there he was. My husband. Standing at the entrance. Not rushing in. Not calling out. Just standing there, like he had been for most of the night. Watching. But this time, there was something different in his expression. Not uncertainty. Not calm. Something closer to concern. Maybe even guilt. But it came too late. Because now I knew the truth. And the truth had already changed everything. He took a step forward, like he was about to speak, to explain, to control the narrative one more time. But I did not give him the chance. Because whatever he was about to say would not be enough. He stopped a few steps inside the room. Close enough to see everything clearly. Far enough to avoid what it meant. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The machines continued their steady rhythm, filling the silence he had chosen earlier with something more honest than words. I did not ask why. I already knew. He tried to speak anyway. His voice came out lower than usual, careful, like he was testing each word before letting it exist. He said it got out of control. Said he handled it the best way he could in the moment. Said he was trying to protect everyone. Protect everyone. The words settled wrong. Because they did not include the one person who mattered most. I stepped closer, not raising my voice, not reacting the way he might have expected. Calm had replaced everything else now. Calm and something far sharper. I told him he did not protect our child. I told him he protected the room. The party. The image. That landed. I saw it in the way his posture shifted, the way his eyes dropped for a second before forcing their way back up. He tried to explain again, saying he panicked, saying he did not want things to spiral, saying he thought he could fix it quietly. Quietly. That word confirmed everything. This was never about a mistake. It was about control. I looked at him, really looked this time, and realized something I had missed for years. Silence had always been his answer. Avoidance had always been his solution. Tonight, it cost too much. I reached for my phone again, not hiding the movement, not explaining it either. He noticed. Of course he did. His expression tightened, understanding exactly what that meant. I was not going to keep this inside the family. I was not going to let it fade into something unspoken. He stepped forward quickly, asking me to wait, to think, to not make things worse than they already were. Worse. The word almost felt unreal. I glanced toward the bed, toward my child, still fighting through something they never should have faced. Then back at him. I told him this was already worse. And it did not start at the hospital. It started the moment they chose silence over truth. I made the call. Not to a relative. Not to anyone inside that house. To someone who would not ignore it. Who would not protect an image. Who would not stay quiet. The conversation was brief but clear. Details. Names. What had happened? What had been hidden? When I ended the call, the room felt different. Not lighter, but honest. He did not speak again, because there was nothing left to defend. I stood there for a moment longer, then turned back to my child, placing my hand gently over theirs. This was not the end. It was the beginning of everything they tried to avoid. A year later, the consequences reached all of them. Not slowly, not quietly, but in ways none of them could control. Because karma does not forget silence. It waits, and then it answers. Tell me in the comment section if you ever suffer such circumstances. Like this story and subscribe to this channel for more interesting revenge and betrayal stories. See you in the next one.